Okay, looks like I hit my time limit last time. Um, the sun is creeping up. Let's try to change things here a little bit. Um, so, okay. Um, so I was talking about um, living in Toledo and really realizing that um, I was not like all the other people around me, that there was something wrong, that I was excruciatingly lonely, and I started to lose hope that I could do anything about it. Um, I started to lose hope that it would resolve itself, I should say. Um, I really realized that it wasn't just going to go away on its own. Um, that this was a perpetual thing and it wasn't just going away. Um, but I couldn't commit suicide because I ultimately realized that as long as I could do something, there was a tiny bit of hope, and that tiny bit of hope was enough. Um, Also during this time, I have to say that I started to really kind of realize, in terms of depression in particular, how much my thoughts made an impact on my depression. I would go through and think really negative, horrible things, sometimes, just, awful things about, you know, I don't know, being killed or, I don't know what, just nasty thoughts. And, the thing is that I realized that, if I thought these thoughts, so intently like I did, um, I would get depressed. And I started to realize the connection between what I was thinking and my emotional state. Um, and in particular, um, when I started to do away with these thoughts, when I started to say, no, God, I got to not think these things, um, I noticed an improvement in my mental state, in my emotional, state. Um, and so I kind of realized that, I did have actually some control somewhere, somehow, that it wasn't necessarily completely hopeless, even though it just was so, I mean, it was like looking at a mountain. It was so overwhelming. Um, so anyway, um, I decided, now I had to back up a little bit and say that I did keep into occasional contact via letters with one of the friends from college from way back when. Um, every once in a while we would write letters to each other. I decided, he was living in Madison, Wisconsin at the time, and I decided that I would, even though the answer wasn't out there, that it was inside me, that I would move to Madison, Wisconsin because I did have at least one person that I knew that lived there. And so you know, at the time I had this long, goatee thing that was like, 4 or 5 inches long and all this stuff. And I shaved all that off and got all cleaned up and I packed up and I moved to Madison, Wisconsin. Now, it was slightly better in that, we got together, went out to dinner once a week. Um, but it didn't really pan out in terms of hanging out with his friends or hanging out with him very much. And I still spent the vast majority of my time um, kind of stewing in my loneliness and just idling the hours away. Um, I still drank a lot and I still was very unhappy and it wasn't really going well. Um, at this time, I was working at I had a couple of jobs, but eventually I got a job at the the warehouse for Famous Footwear, their main warehouse for North America. Now there's two, but then there was one, and I was there and I worked third shift. Um, well, one day, one of the guys there came up to me and said, "Do you play, role-playing games?" Um, and I said, "Well, I used to play Dungeons and Dragons with some friends when I was a kid." And he asked me if I wanted to come and play Vampire the Masquerade with him and his friends. Um, now, the idea of doing this was absolutely horrifying, but I realized that, this was a do or die moment that came into me, you know, and so I said yes. Um, and 4 weeks later, when they finally kind of got everything together, and I learned the rules and whatnot and stuff, I actually got myself over to his house. I actually went inside. I still have clear memories of how horrifying this whole process was, but I knew that, if I didn't do it, that, I could potentially go and sit in my room for years with nothing. So I had to take this opportunity, and I made myself go and do it. And it's kind of funny, actually. I mean, the whole experience of playing Vampire the Masquerade is like just a haze of anxiety and stress and discomfort. Um, I mean, it was about as pleasant, um, possibly even less pleasant than going to the dentist, and getting root canals done and this kind of thing. And it's kind of, what has kind of struck me as odd. I mean, people do this for fun. Seriously, you know, I mean, Jesus, it was terrible. It was fine when I was off in my corner left alone, but when it came up to me to have to like, role play something for God's sakes, I mean, it was like, I don't know, it was bad. But I stuck with it, week after week after week, and I actually became friends with these people. Um, and eventually we stopped playing Masquerade and we just kind of hung out. And when I was one on one with people, I was doing okay, and I was friends, and it was going a lot better. I mean, I actually had some social contact, and out of this group, I met my wife. Who was the woman who was eventually to be my wife. Um, and so ultimately that was good. And what I want to say about that is, I took a big risk. I exposed myself to some serious discomfort, and I did actually benefit as a result. And I admit that I got kind of lucky with meeting my wife, and the fact that she's has stuck with me after all this time, and that I got over to a degree thinking that I'm completely unlikable. And by the way, the reason why I was able to be with her, I guess that another girl in the group was hitting on me pretty blatantly, and I didn't even notice it because I felt like my self-esteem was nothing. I mean, I felt like I was not a likable person. I mean, nobody. Why would anybody, hit on me? It just seemed inconceivable, and so I didn't even notice it. But my wife was much more persistent. Didn't quite take no for an answer. Was a lot more pushy and patient, and eventually broke through, and for that I'm eternally grateful. Anyway, um, I guess I'm going to make a fourth video to do some concluding thoughts. Um, I do want to say that that whole thing was the beginning of improvement for me. The deciding to do make things better for myself, deciding to take some risks, deciding to get out there and to change my reality. Worked. It's been a slow and laborious process. It's taken a long time, and but with some support that I managed to have, I have actually made a lot of progress in my life, and I've gotten a lot better over time. It's really hard to express. I'm sure some of how bad it was for a while. Um, anyway, I'm going to wrap this one up and do one more quick conclusion video.